Welcome to another episode of 3.5 Cast. I'm your host, Mike. I've been DMing since 2000 and am currently leading my PCs through the Shackled City adventure path. With me tonight are Blackhawk.
Hey everybody, I'm Blackhawk. I've been playing D&D for 10 years now, 11 years, give or take. That's all I got.
And PhantasyPen.
I'm PhantasyPen. I've been playing since I was 16 when I ran 3 of my friends through a zombie apocalypse one-shot, and I have been in love with the hobby ever since.
And Troacctid.
Hi, I am Jasmine Troacctid. I am your resident rules lawyer and warlock enthusiast.
We will be picking up where we left off on the DMG Prestige class discussion. Last time we went through the first 3 Prestige classes, which means we will start with the Assassin tonight. As the DMG describes, the Assassin is a master of dealing quick, lethal blows, excelling at infiltration and disguise. They may function as spies, informants, killers for hire, or agents of vengeance. The DMG carries on to basically open up the class to any entry of the core 11 classes, and it carries on with its generic comments by allowing assassins to work in cities, remote fortresses, wilderness, alone, or in a group. As for the abilities of the class, the assassin gains a laundry list of abilities, starting with sneak attack, moving on to poison use, spells off the assassin list, an increasing bonus against poison, uncanny dodge and improved uncanny dodge, hide in plain sight, and the most important thing, the iconic assassin ability, death attack. As for the discussion, I'll just open the floor up now to everyone.
Okay, so I think Assassin is actually a perfect example of what makes the prestige class mechanic so compelling. Because basically, this is clearly a rogue class, right? You're expected to. It's got the sneak attack thing, but you don't actually have to be a rogue to get into it. So sure, you could be a rogue and then prestige into an assassin, but you can also start as a monk, or a bard or a barbarian, whatever you want. And unlike other multi-classes, you're expected to be like level 6 when you take your first level of assassin. So you're getting high level abilities right away. You're not starting over at level 1, even though you might be taking a total 180-degree turn for your character.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely something I always liked about the Assassin. The only 2 things you need on your skill list are hide and move silently, and those are really easy to get. Disguise is kind of incidental. I really do love the class, and I feel it gets a bit of a rep in optimization circles, largely because everyone seems to focus on death attack, which is neat and all, but not terribly useful in general gameplay unless you actually build yourself solely to be doing it, largely because it has the inane restriction of being melee only until you get a very nice spell that lets you do it from range, which is fantastic, but assassins have awesome spells. Maybe not so much in core, but once you open up the other books, things get fantastic for them. Sneak attack's always great. Really, it's just a great class if you kind of know what you're doing. Though it requires a little bit of finesse, which makes perfect sense for what it is.
And PhantasyPen, you have something to add?
Yeah, it's something building off of the reputation the assassin class gets, something that I've always found amusing about this particular class. People always harp on the evil alignment requirement to enter this prestige class, saying things like, you don't have to be evil to be an assassin, and then throwing out examples of characters that really don't fit the concept. But what I find interesting about the assassin as a prestige class is that it effectively represents membership in an assassin's guild rather than a specific character concept. And I I guess the faction rules hadn't been fully thought up yet when the assassin was written. Otherwise, I feel like this class would have been one of the first ones that gives you membership in an organization just for having it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that actually really speaks to the design philosophy that they had for these prestige classes early in the lifespan of 3.5. They, a lot of the players think of them as, mechanical, kind of like the base classes. It's just the mechanics that you want for your character. But you can tell they really envision them as this is a special thing. There's only a few of these in the organization. You have to be like a specific Assassin's Guild in the Free City of Greyhawk or whatever, and that's why you have to kill a person to prove yourselves the assassins, right? In order to enter. A lot of the prestige classes are like that, and I don't know. It's certainly an interesting principle. Uh, a lot of flexibility for the DM.
Yeah, Core had a lot of that without, I guess, really having it. They kind of fleshed it out later on with stuff like the Shadowbane Inquisitor and whatnot, where they were a little more overt that, yes, this is clearly designed to be part of an organization. But then you get stuff in, well, Core here, where you get, like, the Dragon Disciple sitting right next to the Dwarven Defender, where one is, the Dwarven Defender is clearly part of some form of formal, I guess, martial school for dwarves, and then the Dragon Disciple is just sort of someone doing their own thing. The Assassin's in a similar boat. This also is probably why they came out with the web enhancement Avenger, which is literally the Assassin, except they changed the alignment on it and then did a color palette swap on the picture. And I think swapped out a handful of spells, which I've always found very, very amusing. It's that one so you can play James Bond, really.
Can we talk about the spells? Because the spells on Assassin are actually really good. It's one of my favorite things about the class is that you can take this character who didn't have any spellcasting, and then, you just get this spellcasting on top of the sneak attack that maybe you were already getting from Rogue, or maybe you're just, improving your martial abilities. I feel like it's actually one of my favorite classes in the book for just having some way to get your martial character some relevance later in the game with utility spells.
Yeah, the assassin spells, I feel, get, again, much like the rest of the class, a bit of a rap. But there's some really just, I guess, quirky assassin unique spells. I can't remember what it's called, but I know there's one of them where you can, like, stick a weapon in your arm as a tattoo.
That is really literally just called weapon tattoo.
Well, they were correct on the naming there. I've never used it because assassin is spelled known, but it's definitely a neat concept.
I'd say the most iconic assassin spell to me, meaning the one I think of first whenever I think of this class, is the Flame Shuriken spell.
I love Flame Shuriken. That spell is amazing.
See, for me, I think you don't even need to go into the spell compendium, because I actually really like the spell list that they have just in Core. Like, there's a lot of great stuff in there. Disguise Self, Featherfall, Obscuring Mist at first level, those are all really nice. True Strike goes great with sort of the assassin strategy of watching and observing. Then you've got, like, Alter Self at second level. You can get Dimension Door later on. I love Dimension Door. It's one of my favorite spells.
Yeah, their spell list has always reminded me, basically, of just, it's your tool belt. Here's your handful of quirky little abilities you have that you just kind of whip out whenever you need it. And it's definitely helpful for that. It's just that the spell compendium added so many really fun spells. And I still usually grab, like, Obscuring Mist, because it's really nice to just scream Ninja Bomb and run away. But the stuff like Heart Ripper, which is it's a horrible spell. It's not even that good. It's
that is so beautiful, though.
It's so metal. It's such a metal spell. To rip people's hearts out.
Oh, man.
It's so dumb and horrible as a decision, but when it works, it's just beautiful. Because you're really just better off casting Flame Shuriken and then throwing it at somebody from stealth and getting a crap ton of extra d6 thrown on it, but there's something about ripping out someone's heart.
Yes, it's just something that appeals to the primal side of us, I think.
I ran an assassin NPC a couple sessions ago in the campaign I'm running now, and I was like, okay, we'll go Rogue 3, and you know what? I want him to be invisible, so I gave him 2 levels a month with Invisible Fist, and that was my entry. And then I thought, let's make this guy a little more dangerous. So I used there's like a in the Dungeon Master's Guide 2, it's like a weird unique NPC thing where you can give them extra arms. It's like, okay, this guy's got 4 arms, he's gonna make 4 sneak attacks per round.
Oh, I
Anyway,
love those.
yeah, so his death attack failed miserably, but then he just in the first round he just killed the player with damage. It's like maybe I went a little overboard with it.
That kind of reminds me of, I actually got to play a particular build I came up with once. It was really just theory crafting. I never expected to actually get a chance to really run it. But we did a Red Hand of Doom playthrough once, and I'm running a standard Tiefling, and it's a wonky build to go into it, but it's Rogue 1, Swashbuckler 1, Sword Sage, then you go back to Swashbuckler again, and then you go back to Rogue to get all the stuff you need to get into Assassin. What you're getting out of all of this is Shadow Hand stuff, which you really only care for, well, getting the Shadow Hand feat to get dex to damage, and you have int to damage, both of which stack, and then you just randomly turn invisible in the middle of combat, stab someone in the kidney, and then they just kind of explode from the amount of damage you're doing. You also have the opportunity to do Death Attack, and you are unintentionally boosting Death Attack because you're boosting your int for damage anyway, so all of this just chains into this disgusting dagger-wielding dude who just poofs out of nowhere and rams a knife into somebody, and they just sort of drop dead.
Congratulations, you created the embodiment of the chunky salsa rule.
And that description of the character, by the way, is so incredibly 3.5. Just all these things from all different books and a bunch of names thrown about. If there are listeners who didn't understand any of that, don't worry. It's okay.
We will explain it eventually.
Yeah, from an optimization standpoint, that thing was an utter grab bag to make the entire thing work. It does work without the Tome of Battle stuff, but it really just works so much more streamlined with that, and it's just so much more efficient at what it's trying to accomplish. And it's funny, because I don't even need the maneuvers. You're literally just there for the feat to give you dex to damage. Because I was running around with 20 dex and 20 int, and it's just, oh look, I stab you with a dagger, and now you just take a boatload of damage and die. Because then you take the Craven feat and add even more. It's just...
Please tell me you had Assassin's Stance.
Of course I had Assassin's Stance. That was
Assassin's
just...
Stance, of course, is a Sword Sage ability from the Sword Sage class that gives you sneak attack, kind of like an assassin, but not death attack.
More d6s. Just a stupid amount of d6s. Grab some Daring Outlaw for more d6s to throw around, and then you just sort of poke things, and if there's a sneak attack on that thing, you're gone. And the best part is that even if you're not in stealth with this build, you don't even need a flanking buddy, because you can just swing for enough actual raw damage at the lower end that you're fine. And then once you get to the higher end, you have stealth, so you don't really care anymore.
So one other thing I do want to talk about the Assassin is it actually has a pretty storied history throughout, the various editions of D&D. I don't remember if it was in first edition. Was it in first edition? I know it was in second edition. It was a kit for the rogue class, right? So you could be a rogue, and then you could choose, oh, you're an assassin, and they'll give you some bonuses on certain things and penalties on other things, right? Then, of course, third edition and 3.5 came along, and assassin was a prestige class in the core rules. I believe it was a fairly popular one. As far as I know, I've heard it spoken about favorably quite often. And then in 4th edition, they actually made it into a base class of its own. It was totally separate. It was a striker class that had, Shadow as its power source. And it was kind of strange. I didn't actually end up liking it much. And then in 5th edition, of course, the assassin is a subclass of the rogue. And out of all those, I feel like I really like the 3.5 version the best, just because of the flexibility of being able to put in all sorts of different kinds of characters, not just rogues.
Yeah, I kind of agree there. I actually got to play funnily enough, 4th edition had 2 assassins.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, there was one earlier that was using the what were they called, cloaks or something. They're both strikers, obviously, because they're both rogue based. But there was that one, and there was the one from Heroes of Shadow, which really it had some supernatural stuff, but most of it was frankly, oh, you grab a crossbow and then shoot somebody point blank in the face, or you have a garrote wire, or you felt more like an actual mundane assassin, which was kind
So
of
it was more Hitman rather
yeah.
than Bloodborne, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it had some supernatural stuff, like there was some teleporting shenanigans going on, but it was weird. I wasn't sure why there was two. I mean, maybe this has been a long time, so maybe one was an alternate rogue thing or something. I'm not sure. Fourth edition was not something I particularly liked. But 3.5, I think, kind of nailed it because the spells don't feel like, well, most of them don't feel like spells if you don't want them to, because then you can just grab Obscuring Mist or some of the other simple ones where it's just, yeah, I'm really skilled, so now I'm just over there, or I'm ninja bombing. But if you want to go be the unholy dark assassin powered by shadow magic, well, yeah, go for it. Go be just.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that I've seen people laugh about on the forums, which is that the assassin casts spells as a bard. And of course, the intention of that is probably, oh, well, it's arcane casting, but you can cast in light armor normally, right? But one of the side effects of it is that bards have a special rule about their casting, where their spells have to have verbal components. So you end up, the assassin is completely incapable of casting silent spells. So you're stealthing up, and then you just speak, these spells. You can't be quiet about it at all.
I mean, how else are you going to kill someone with a pithy one-liner?
That's a good take on it. I like that take.
I always just preferred screaming, sneak attack! And then you just stab them back in the head. Whatever you just did. Because half the time...
I believe the correct phrasing is sneak attack, bitch.
Yeah, that's always working.
Is that the Order of the Stick reference?
Yeah.
Yes.
And honestly, I've found that most of my spell usage with Assassin always wound up being using the spell that made my death attack go off in one turn. So just fling, stab. Oh, look, you're dead. Right, moving on.
Well, moving on from there, I think that it's interesting that PhantasyPen brought up the any evil alignment requirement earlier. But another thing is the special requirement that the character must kill someone for no other reason than to join the assassins. And I just wonder how you all feel about that, or if you hand wave that, or if you use it.
Go.
I mean,
okay.
It's definitely a murder hobo requirement.
I actually don't think of it that way. I feel like it's more of a role player requirement. It ties into the fact that, of course, it's a more of a specific, the Assassin's Guild. But it's like, okay, in order to get these abilities, you have to actually be part of this organization. And in order to be part of this organization, they put in kind of like I don't know, I think of it as like a hazing. Like new guys got to do their thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that take on it. The way I think of it and the way I use it with my group is that it's just another set of abilities. Like if you're going to be evil and specifically hunt down people or whatever, kill them from the shadows, then you can just do that on your own, especially considering the description of the class does say they can work alone. I mean, it doesn't mean they have to work outside of a group of assassins, but just the fact that they can work alone, I have always felt that they don't need to kill someone for no other reason than to join the assassins, but perhaps they have to kill someone for no other reason than to just murder someone.
I mean, that definitely works and is a little more flexible on the fluff side, because that's the slight issue with these early classes where they imply that there is an organization behind you, but there's not really anything spelled out. The fluff is extremely vague, which is great from a malleability standpoint, but once you start poking it a little bit, it gets a little funky because now you got to modify it to fit your own setting, which you generally do anyway. But I've always kind of just waived it because I'm like, this feels like a very natural road progression, and some people were just like, that seems kind of dumb, and I'm like, yeah, well, you're not actually joining a guild, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then once I found out about the Avenger, I just went, well, I'm just going to go do that now because that's just way easier to deal with.
Yeah, in my games, I usually hand wave that requirement as well because I don't like the idea of having just the Assassin's Guild that you have to join in order to be an assassin. Although
I've
one way that I do like it, there's a in Unearthed Arcana, they introduced the idea of test-based prerequisites, where instead of having to have the skills and base attack bonus and stuff, uh, you just have to be able to, oh, here's this thing that you need to do to prove yourself. And if you can do this thing, it doesn't matter how you do it or how many ranks you have. As long as you can do it, we'll let you join. Um, and in that context, I think the requirement makes a lot more sense. But outside of that context, I'm a little iffy on it.
I have only played alongside an assassin, and only one time, I'm afraid. I had a DM who liked using them quite a bit against us, but he used a third party base class, which took the assassin prestige class and stretched it out into a 20 level class. Very interesting and perhaps a little bit better designed, but not something we're going to go into.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that one happen before with the assassin. I have a it's a 3-5 based OGL setting that did the same thing. They did it with a bunch of other classes too. It was really neat actually, and their assassin was pretty cool. I think it was like the Accord Lands or something, which was kind of cool. I always liked it, but that's something I've always felt. It's probably why the assassin works as well as it does, is because it can get easily shifted into a rogue type or a base class or
Yes.
some other sub thing to it, which is why it's hung around for so long, because it is just it's a playstyle.
As far as Wizards of the Coast was concerned, the Blackguard epitomized evil, and they spent almost a paragraph just describing just how evil they are. They claim that the Blackguard is nothing short of a mortal fiend, etc. I'll just skip the rest of that. But they also go on to say that the Blackguard has many options available to him, sending forth dark minions and servants to do his bidding, attacking with stealth and honorless guile, or straightforward smiting of the forces of good that stand in his way. As NPCs, Wizards of the Coast finds that they usually lead legions of undead, evil outsiders, or other monsters to conquer their own realm or expand their existing territory. Personally, my experience has been different, but I'll hold off on that for now. As for the mechanics, they have some of what you would expect from an anti-paladin, almost exactly the opposite, but they have an aura of evil instead of good, they have detect good instead of detect evil, they also have poison use, smite good, dark blessing, which is still just charisma to saves, command rebuke undead, aura of despair, which is just a penalty to saves. They have a slow progression sneak attack, spells off the Blackguard spell list, and what is questionable, maybe good, maybe not so good, is the Fiendish Servant. But, yeah, take it from there, everybody.
What I have always loved about the Blackguard is that as a prestige class, even though it is the first in a very long line of evil paladin archetypes, in fact, it is the thing that created that archetype, you don't have to be a paladin to get into it. You can be any really skilled martial character and take this class. All you have to do is get a few feats that you probably would have taken anyways, and have a peaceful contact with an evil outsider, something from the lower planes. The class feature that I often find myself surprised that this class gets is sneak attack. It is probably that is probably the thing that makes it different from every other variation of this concept out there. I've never seen any of them get that particular ability for some reason.
Yeah, like the sneak attack isn't a lot of damage in itself. Uh, I do actually like it for its ability to like there's a bunch of stuff in the game that interacts with sneak attack. So you take like sneak attack feats and stuff, and the blackguard has access to that, which is kind of cool. But my favorite thing about the blackguard is that it has this really unique design technology, where it's supposed to be accessible not just to paladins, but also to fallen paladins. So you can be a paladin who turns evil. Now, of course, the paladin class, if you turn evil, you actually lose all your class features. It sucks. But then the blackguard is there, hey, you got a way out of that. And then if you actually like sort of get your abilities back-ish, but like in an evil form. Like for every level of fallen paladin that you have, you get extra blackguard abilities, and I love that. It's just really cool that not a lot of prestige classes have explored that space.
Yeah, the blackguard, which is actually how it's pronounced because it's an old insult,
Yeah,
means a person without bereft of honor and whatnot. It's a neat class. I've looked at it, I've examined it, never actually ran one, but it's interesting from its design philosophy. It's also interesting because you have to be level 7 to take your first level up, which I always thought was a little strange, but
oh yeah.
it was always a little quirky. And then the improved Sunder was something I always thought was a little strange, but whatever. It's weird feat things in 3.5.
There's nothing wrong with sundering, despite what the optimization boards will tell you.
I don't like breaking my loot. I'm the guy who takes the armor and sells it.
Well,
I will strip my fallen foes of armor.
in my experience,
you're doing it,
the
you're doing
fallen
it.
foes never have anything worth taking. Or they explode and you can't rob them anyways.
That's fair. But yeah, if you run into this, you can trade levels of your old paladin class, which I thought was neat. But that's usually not the best plan, because it's weird, and you're better off just having X paladin levels, because you get all sorts of goodies. Extra smites, you get your lay on hands back, you get more sneak attack, you get all sorts of wonky stuff, which is great. And their spell list is okay. Not amazing, but of course that one gets really elaborated on in later books, which is, of course, always amazing. And then there's their Fiendish Servant, which is kind of meh.
I like the Fiendish Servant.
It's definitely neat. It's just like, I look at it and I just go, this looks significantly worse than some other ones I've seen. But that's largely because what you're stuck with for your choices initially, which is always a little rough. But the class does what it says it's going to do, and it does do that fine. So I can't really criticize it for that, at the very least. Like, you can jump into this as like a barbarian if you want, and then it's like, oh, hey, look, I do barbarian stuff, and now I have blackguard stuff, which is nice. Which is always neat, I guess.
This is one that I actually like a lot for NPCs more than player characters. I think you can do a lot of really great villains with this class.
Yeah, I think it does actually work better as an NPC prestige class. I mean, if you build it specifically as for a PC, it'll work fine, but there's generally superior options for this. If you're trying to build the evil paladin trope, there's the long list of evil paladin base classes of varying quality. But
the last time I played an evil paladin, I actually used Warblade to do it.
Yeah, honestly, an evil crusader and evil warblade gets the point across, because paladin is generally, this is a paladin thing, because that's almost a roleplay thing, but I like paladins. I've enjoyed playing paladins, and if I want to play an evil paladin, I very typically play a paladin of slaughter, and I might actually go blackguard, because there's some stuff in there, but I've never actually done it, because I just wound up being happier continuing my paladin of slaughter tree.
For our less experienced listeners, Crusader and Warblade are base classes from the Tome of Battle. Paladin of Slaughter and Paladin of Tyranny are some evil paladin variants from Unearthed Arcana, which is if you want sort of like the Blackguard as a base class instead of a prestige class.
Yeah, and they work fine for what they're intended to do. Pretty much the same as Blackguard. They do what they say on the tin, they do it acceptably in my opinion, and not a hell of a lot to say beyond that.
Yes, and I think that you all actually touched on what I was hinting at earlier about the fact that the description that you're given about the Blackguard doesn't necessarily pan out, such as how he's got so many options available to him and he can be so effective with all these different things. But in actuality, that's not typically the case unless you've got an NPC built specifically towards one of those things, and then sure, I can agree with it.
Yeah, the one I particularly wanted to point out with it, now that I think about it, was the commanding all of the undead. Okay, yes, it has command undead. That's great, and that's wonderful, except you have no real way to make undead, unless you're doing it through varying weird shenanigans, and there's plenty of those, but it's not good at it. It doesn't have a great command pool, because your command undead works as a cleric of 2 levels lower, which is annoying. You're not going to have a
worse. That's even worse than it sounds, because you're not getting into Blackguard until you have 6 levels in some other class. So let's say you're a level 10 character. You got 4 levels of Blackguard. That means you're commanding undead the same as a 2nd level cleric. You're way behind.
Yeah, and honestly, I've played Necromancers before. It's a rough run. There is a reason why there are like 3 or 4 classes that can actually be competent Necromancers, one of which is the Dread Necromancer, named that. The other one's Cleric, are the 2 big ones. And they're completely blowing the Blackguard out of the water on this. You can't even really be the lieutenant that's just sort of hanging on to hit die of undead, because you don't really have enough. Because, as pointed out, at level 10, you are commanding at such a low level, you're going to have like an 8 hit die undead hanging out with you. And an 8 hit die undead at level 10 is a joke. Even if it's a big scary skeleton, it's just going to get obliterated. It doesn't have enough.
Yeah.
It's not tough enough. And the zombies are, but it won't have enough. It won't be anything. It'll be lame.
Yeah, little guys like that, you really got to use them for like just minor stuff, scouting, action economy.
Yeah, necromancers typically have one. If you're the PC necromancer, I should say, will have generally one giant one, like a Hydra or something, because the giant horde doesn't work for in-game and out-of-game reasons.
Well, that seems like a good time to move on to the Dragon Disciple, which is an interesting class, but has flaws in a more pronounced way than the Blackguard. The Dragon Disciple slowly accrues bonuses that are supposed to reflect the slow progression towards the capstone, Dragon Apotheosis. Along the way, the character gains natural armor, claws, bite, breath weapon, blind sense, wings, and the half-dragon template, so you definitely are working towards that goal of being a dragon. However, notably, the Prestige class requires spellcasting to enter, but does not progress the casting. So you're kind of like this half caster, half martial character that doesn't really excel at either.
The Dragon Disciple is an interesting class. It was clearly written with the intent of being a power-up for spellcasters, but instead of giving you caster levels, it gives you extra bonus spell slots, which is an interesting change, to say the least. The various buffs that this class gets, along with the impressive arsenal of natural attacks, lean it more towards benefiting a martial class, which then becomes hampered by its 3/4 base attack. On the overall, it's a very early example of the Gish category of prestige class. But despite its flaws, it is still an improvement over many later variants of the concept. Troacctid, I believe you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah. So I actually disagree. I think it's not intended for spellcasters. Actually, it says right here in the book, most are barbarians, fighters, or rangers who have dabbled as sorcerers or bards. And only occasionally a serious spellcaster explores the path to further a goal of finding out more about his draconic heritage, though at the expense of most of his arcane studies. So it's actually really intended as a martial class. And I think once you look at it from that perspective, it starts to feel, uh, more attractive because you're only expecting, oh, I've only got a single level of sorcerer anyway, right? So like, I'll get some extra first level spells, but mainly I'm in it for the strength bonuses, the blind sense, which is a really great ability, the wings, which are actually pretty hard to get as a martial character in a core game. Um, uh, yeah.
The Dragon Disciple is a class that I just call a hot, eclectic mess. Now, can you make it work? Definitely. There's very few things in 3.5 you cannot make work on some level. The list is extremely short. It's just the class is, I would call it a bit of a trap if people are unfamiliar with it, because it looks really great. You got D12 hit die, that's awesome. You get bonus spells, that sounds really great. And then you look at all the stat bonuses, and you're going, holy crap. And then you kind of start poking around in it, and it gets a little messy. I mean, it's in core, so, well, here's the thing. There is one intelligence-based caster, which is the mental stat it boosts later on, and that's the wizard, who cannot qualify for it. So you're going with either Bard, or you are going with Sorcerer. Now, Bard's a little more of a natural fit in here because, well, you're already kind of smacking things with weapons. The issue Bards have, though, is that you're not advancing your Bardic music, which you probably kind of dumped anyway if you're going into this. And then you just get some bonus spell slots, which you probably didn't care about a whole hell of a lot to begin with. And then the wonky 3/4 BAB is just, it just seems like such a strange choice to me. Because you're trying to be a dragon. Well, if you're trying to be a dragon, dragons are D12 hit die with full base attack bonus. So I'm not quite sure, I've never been able to figure out why this class wasn't doing that. My assumption is that they were afraid of the stat bonuses. That's the best guess I have. Honestly,
it has a 3/4 space attack bonus for the same reason the Totemist has a 3/4 space attack bonus. They think that the number of natural attacks and stat boosts will compensate somehow.
Which is a pretty high expectation.
The Totemist definitely deserves the 3/4 because of the sheer quantity of attacks you can slap onto that thing. But this one has claws and a bite. You have 3 natural attacks. You are barely above a 2-weapon wielder. And you're not having bigger damage dice, so that's not really an issue. It's an okay thing. You could make it work, and frankly, you'd almost want to go into this with something like the Assassin before this, and then you can just start slapping tons of spell slots onto things. And it's a workable class. It just requires a lot of skill to actually get, well, the best. I don't even want to say the best out of it, just enough out of it to not feel like it got screwed over. Because that's kind of the issue here, is that it looks all really great on paper until you realize that you're level 15 by the time everything's all online, and it's kind of quirky because you've got maybe second level spell casting at best. This definitely works way better once more books start getting added in, because other classes mesh with this just a little bit better. Like Duskblade. Duskblade actually meshes with this a bit better because they don't quite mind about not getting all of their spells. They can kind of stop at like level 7 if you want, and then just kind of run on this, and you don't feel so bad because now you just have more spell slots to burn.
Mike,
Well, I have a question, for everybody here. So if we can all agree that it's kind of a bit of a mess, even if it is more geared towards the melee side of things, in the event that you were to say, homebrew it just a little bit and take away the bonus spells and take away the casting prerequisite, does it feel like it's a better choice, or is it still going to be kind of an issue just because of that lower base attack bonus.
It's still a bit awkward, if only because Dragon Apotheosis. Something you might notice, it doesn't remove the level adjustment for the Half Dragon template.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. It should kind of. This is an issue that several classes and prestige classes have when they do this. The Dread Necro gets a little wonky because we're not entirely certain if that actually gives you the Lich template or just says you're a Lich now. It's very strange. But this one has the issue of it doesn't say you don't have the level adjustment. Maybe Troacctid could point that one out later. I'm not the raw expert here. But frankly, it just should anyway. I always would if I was the DM. But as for is it worth it without the spell and the casting in, you drop the casting requirement, it's definitely easier to get in by anybody.
Right.
Frankly, though, if you're going to do that, I would just bump it to full BAB. I don't see this as being a massive issue with it being full base attack bonus because your average player is only going to have a D6 bite damage and D4 claw damage.
Sure.
Which is very meh. I mean, yes, you can totally make those better, but it's like that is just not impressive. And I think most people would probably just use a greatsword and ignore the claws and then just have the bite instead of armor spikes.
Mm-hmm.
So, to answer your question, yes, according to a strict reading of the rules, you would gain the Half Dragon template along with all the abilities with it. And that has some strange implications. One of them would be gaining a level adjustment. Another one would be, it looks like as written, you get all the ability adjustments of the Half Dragon template, in addition to the ability adjustments you already got from the class, so it's like doubling everything. That's really weird. Obviously, the intent is, you got all these abilities through 10 levels of the class. There's just, whatever's left over, and you don't need the level adjustment because you just took 10 levels of the Prestige class. But my thoughts on this class, and the casting mechanic specifically, is I think it was kind of a failed experiment. In the early days of 3.0 and also 3.5, they sort of had a few classes that had at least, instead of advancing your spell casting, you just get an extra spell slot. And this isn't the only one. There's like the one that I think of is the Eunuch Warlock in Oriental Adventures, which has nothing to do with the Warlock class in Complete Arcane. But the Eunuch Warlock had the same mechanic where instead of advancing your casting, like most casting prestige classes do now, it gave you extra spell slots at the highest level. And we can see how that design philosophy changed because when they came out with the 3.5 update for Oriental Adventures, which was published in Dragon Magazine, but when they came out with that, they actually changed the Eunuch Warlock Prestige class, and they basically said, yeah, this mechanic sucks, so we're actually changing it. Now it actually advances your casting like many of the other Prestige classes do. And basically, that's how I feel about Dragon Disciple. It's just like, yeah, you got this weird, wonky casting mechanic that isn't very good, and then just later they stumbled upon a better solution for it. So if they were redoing this class today, I think they would have made it half casting. You would advance casting every other level.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I have always felt that any of these classes or prestige classes, pretty much until much later on, when it just has a bonus spells column like that, that it was an early 3rd edition idea, hadn't been fully tested or played out or thought about. The implications just weren't there yet that, hey, this might not really be of use to anyone. And it's reminiscent of the very first prestige class that was printed in Dragon Magazine, which was the Mystic. And I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, but very, very briefly, it's all about casting, all about metamagic casting, and the class does not advance casting. So you go into it as like a straight wizard or whatever, and I forget exactly what level the entry is, but let's say you'll have like 4th or 5th level spells. That's it. That's all you get, and it's a 10 level class, and it's a cool concept, but yeah, doesn't progress casting. Definitely not what was intended, I think. They really just, at that point in the 3rd edition lifespan, didn't fully understand the implications of what they were printing.
Yeah, that just sounds disgusting to me.
Like,
the Dragon Disciple I know has usage, because I personally think if you were going to reprint it today, it'd probably have 3/4 casting, just because that's how I'd slap it down. It's got 3/4 BAB, so I don't see a reason not to give it 3/4 casting.
Fair.
I mean, yeah, it's a lot, but you're also slapping a template and crap on yourself later, which opens up a bunch of other things you got going on. And you just took 10 levels in a class. I think you deserve that. But the Dragon Disciple, I usually see get used to add more spell slots, like I said with the Assassin, to Prestige class spellcasting. So things like the Swole, Arcana Mock, the Assassin, and anybody else who's got a unique spell list in their own Prestige class, because usually their issue is they've got a dearth of spell slots, and there's no way to continue the casting going. So the best way for them to do it is to jump into this, and then they get a couple extra spell slots. So in that case, it's usually only like 2 levels of Dragon Disciple, just to get themselves 2 more things. And you get a +2 strength bonus, which, can't crap on that. That's definitely nice.
I actually really love that use for the Prestige class. It's a great example of the emerging gameplay that the Prestige class mechanic supports. It's obviously way different than what the designers intended, but you feel really, I discovered a great combo, right? And it's one of the most fun things about this edition for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gotta say, there's something crazy about 3.5. I mean, here we are sitting, approaching 20 years after the game's released, and people will occasionally drag out something where it's like, I found this wonky feat buried in the back of the book that no one really paid attention to. And then I thought it interacts weirdly with this other thing over here, and then we all sort of stare at it and go, how have we missed this? Because it's awesome. It happens all the time, and it's so weird.
All the time, I swear.
That's why we love the forum so much.
Yep.
I mean, I happen to remember that happened a couple years ago. I don't even remember what it was, but there was some wonky little weird feat that interacted strangely with something else, and it was way better than you would actually think. It's just so strange that happened yet. Probably why the game is still alive.
Oh, that's most definitely the reason the game is still alive.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Building a character, it's definitely a thing.
All right, well, that's all we've got for tonight. Next time, we will be bringing up the Duelist, and I think we're all going to take a big old dump on it. But we'll find out then.
It was so bad.
It's so bad.
Oh, man. I mean, come on, guys. There's got to be something redeemable about it.
No.
That's a funny joke.
Swashbuckler. Be happier as a person.
It's worse than the Swashbuckler, and the Swashbuckler is so bad.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
that's what it was trying to do.
Swashbuckler is not that bad.
No, the
So-
Swashbuckler is salvageable. That's the difference.
Oh, we're gonna have so much.
Duelist is not. The Duelist is a hot mess.
Okay, look at it this way. If we didn't have the Duelist, we'd never have gotten the Swashbuckler.
Just
That's
consider
not-
this a preview of what will happen when we actually do discuss the Duelist.
The Duelist is the Prestige class version of the Complete Warrior Samurai. Let that sink in.
It's clearly a Swashbuckler.
Okay. Cut the recording, man. Cut the recording.
All right, so
We'll
everybody's
hopefully
going
see
to
you
sign
guys
off
next time.
here. See you then. So with me tonight was Blackhawk,
Peace out, guys.
PhantasyPen, and Troacctid.
Swashbuckler is an abomination, I swear. Okay, don't get me started.
3.5 cast out.
You leave my precious Swashbuckler alone.